Alright, gamers, it is time for quite possibly the last part for unused content in New Super Mario Bros Wii, and today we're going to continue the rest of this here page for the last bit of content, unused content that I found for New Super Mario Bros Wii. So let's begin with this here tournament mode. But before we truly begin, I do gaming content like this all the time. If that's the type of thing, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's for free and you can always change your mind later on. Anyways, let's continue here with from February to March 2010. Nintendo posted a coin battle tournament in Japan with all those kanjis there. It's apparently used a special version of the game. There was also a coin battle championship in Italy and a national coin challenge in Australia. But of the latter, at least, it seems like the retail version of the game was used. Interestingly, layout files for some of the special screens used for the tournament still exist, but only in the Korean, Taiwanese, and NVIDIA Shield TV versions, which were built after the tournament. They are multi-course select underscore tournament and multi-course select underscore tournament button. There are also codes left over in the Korean, Taiwanese, and NVIDIA Shield TV versions. There are strings that reference the layout files and actors that aren't in the other versions. Multi underscore course underscore select underscore tournament and multi underscore course underscore select underscore tournament underscore button. Alright, E3 demo leftovers. There are a few leftovers from the E3 2009 demo, which was also used at later events that year. You can play for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, the session will automatically end. This was shown in the title screen. Alright, event version, shown in the level select screen at the time. Up screen, not scream. Thank you for playing. You continue your adventure in the retail version. And displayed when the session ended. Score, coins, enemies, and lives left. Displays in the free-for-all results. And then the time underscore up actor. What's using the code when, hey, time's up, time to go. Displayed when the session ended, after which the game would reboot. Renders a layout of this code over here. You can display this actor in-game by enabling the following action replay code for PAL version 1 and entering stage. This code right over here. And there's a closer look at that. Kiosk demo time up layout. Present in the Korean version and all versions thereafter is the time up underscore trial play layout and leftovers from the Japanese kiosk demo version. Because the retail version's font doesn't include the correct kanji characters for this message, they aren't displayed here. And here's what it looks like. Guy only had 20 seconds left on there too. Alright, unused hint movies. Now in the finale to my playthrough I showed up some of the hint movies in Peach's Castle, and it seems there were a few that were unused. There are a total of 82 hint movies. While 62 of them are used, the rest of them go unused. This might also suggest there was originally going to be more Starcoin locations. In one of the previous parts I did mention, or it was mentioned, that there was going to be World 9, 10, 11, and 12. Or World 10, 11, and 12, there was a World 9. But those ended up going scrapped, so maybe those extra Starcoins could have went to these unused hint movies at some point, who knows. Or either that or it's other hint movies for some other parts of the game that didn't have hint movies in them. And maybe some of the other ones that costed 10 star coins would originally cost 5. So that you had more star coins for those unused ones had they been used. But anyways, the rest of them go unused. They mostly contain super skills and are broken due to the level layout being different from when the inputs were recorded. Alright, we have them over here. 1-3 for unused super skills. 4 of them for 2-2 as well. 3 of them for 2-5. 1 unused infinite 1-up for 3-2. 3-5 has 3 unused super skills. 6-castle, 1 unused super skill. 7-tower, 1 unused star coin, and 1 unused super skill. And we'll get into why that's the case in a bit. And 9-8, 2 unused super skills. And now let's take a closer look at that. I think the reason this one went unused, especially since the coins aren't even animated, I think is because they're a little uncoordinated. This is likely just a practice for them, if I had to guess. This video is quite lengthy, so I'm definitely going to skip through most of this. But yeah. I think this was likely just them practicing. Makes me wonder why they even left this in here, in the files. Yeah, just stand there. Real super with your skills, dude. Alright, there's this one with the penguin suits. Yeah, they messed this one up. Again, this looks like they were just practicing, if I had to guess, until they got it right. I mean, with how cool those super skills are, there's no way in hell they did those all by themselves. And Mario's dead. Oh no, he's there somehow. And then sink into quicksand. And he stood there again. Maybe his control got disconnected when those 4 devs were testing this out. Alright, nothing much more to see here. Alright. Get to the rest of that. This is pretty much most of that. Alright, here's the unused one for the castle, or the 7-dash tower. And I can kind of see why this one went unused, because it's literally just, like, there's so much you can do when you have to wait on this vertical platform. In a way, because of that, this ends up being a vertical scroller. So, more reasons why auto-scrollers suck ass. And even the question mark block isn't animated. It would have been cool if he was, like, trailing up there with the bullet bills, which is clearly what he's trying to do up here. I guess he can't make it all the way up there. Just, I think that's as far as you can go without having to wait for the lift. That's true, there might also be bonsai build blasters in that wall there, but as we stated in previous parts, that ended up going unused. You can kind of, if you look closely, you can still see the blasting animation from that too, so it must be hidden in some way. Or there's no cannon back there, period, but the little animation to make it look like they're blowing out of something is still there. Just all in the immersion. Alright, that one has its final design layout. With the warp pipe and the star coin there. I guess that was a part of the super skill, intentionally take damage. I mean, there's so much you can really do when you have to rely on that thing. Just a boring trek upward. Let's skip through most of this. Alright, and this one looks like it was for the secret exit. Which you can tell the wall isn't fully loaded in there. Well, not loaded in there, it isn't fully textured there like it is in the final game. Alright, well, that's the end of that. And then World 7 to Tower. Star coins. Players jump on bullet bills to get one up. Collect the first star coin. Above that, you get the gist. All the little strings over here they're using for where they wanted to put the different parts of the stage, the different star coins, the different enemy placements, etc. Alright, super skills. Player starts with a propeller suit the player gets hurt 2 times, shows the secret exit. As you saw in that little video there, and everything else over here. That's not string code, I was mistaken there, but yeah, it's just everything we saw in those videos. Now, unused behaviors. The star coins can be moved by sand spouts, as we see in World 2, just the same spouts is what I'm talking about, even before being displaced with a POW block. Question mark. Some objects that aren't used in dark levels emit light. Alright, spike tops and chain jumps can be bounced off of with Yoshi, and we later see that in Super Mario Maker. Well, not with the chain jumps, but with spike tops we do. The former is also unused in New Super Mario Bros. Wii, but the latter doesn't work in that game. Both are used in Super Mario Maker. Actually, look at that, I was right. Been a bit since I played Mario Maker at the time of making this. Chain jumps, thwomps, and prickly Goombas have hitboxes that are impenetrable by Yoshi's tongue. It's just like with Hammer Bros. Alright, switches can be pressed by Yoshi even when the player is not riding Yoshi. And dry bones have the standard behavior of overworld enemies being in water, splashing when entering and moving slowly when in. So maybe dry bones were originally going to be ambush enemies? Who knows? Now Yoshi's detaches from Mario if they enter water. Both regular and giant wigglers can be defeated with Yoshi by throwing a hammer on them. In addition, giant wigglers can be eaten by Yoshi, but they cannot be defeated with a ground pound, while regular wigglers cannot be eaten, but they can be defeated with a ground pound. Alright, switching levers. The game has good support for changing Mario's active layer, letting him stand on foregrounds or background tiles. This is used to implement the Mini Mario Pipe Select in 1-3, but it seems Nintendo plans to do more with it. Entrances have an unused settings to spawn Mario on any layer. The unused sprites, this code here, can switch Mario between layers as well. Every sprite can be placed on any layer. This is the only configurable setting in the game that applies to all types of sprites. This feature is only used in 1-3 to move 3 types of sprites: coins, invisible 1-ups, and special exit controllers to the ground layer. Oh, we have an unused darkness setting, which I have a feeling this might have been a precursor to the light that we use in 6-6. There's an unused darkness setting which causes triangular light beams to be generated by each player. The beams face the same way as the player and can be rotated 0 and 180 degrees by tilting the relevant Wii remote, which once again sounds like a precursor to the lamp we use in 6-6, but here's what it looks like. Alright, unused camera settings. All settings described here are configurable in level files. The camera has 8 modes, which 2, 5, and 7 go unused. Mode 2 causes the camera to only zoom out in multiplayer mode if the players are far apart vertically instead of in any direction. Even then, it won't zoom out the entire way unless the player who's moving away vertically is flying with a propeller suit or block. Interestingly, this mode has its own unique list of zoom level options. Mode 7 is the horizontal equivalent of Mode 2, but without the unique zoom levels. And Mode 5 enables an unused feature that lets the level designer switch the cameras to different settings: mode, zoom, bounce, and zoom change. Based on activated flag IDs. The configuration of this is actually stored in its own section of the level data, which is empty in all levels in the final game. Unfortunately, there is no transition when these settings change, making this feature jarring and unusable unless sprite or zoom sprites 206 are used to hide the change. It's also buggy. The first set of camera settings in the level data can't be the first ones to activate due to an incorrectly initialized variable, and any changes to the camera bounds are immediately reverted into the next frame. And here's what that looks like. Perhaps this could have been used in like multiplayer for like a really wide vertical level. Vertical scrolling level. Clearly a test map version of 1-1. Alright, zoom levels. There are a few unused zoom level options, but most aren't very interesting. One fixes the camera size and just 7 tiles tall. Another is similar, but also allows the camera to expand in multiplayer mode up to the absolute maximum of 28, which is the size used in the giant bonus area in World 9-3. And here's what that looks like. I mean, that wide zoom, as I mentioned there in 9-3, the only time in the entire game where that's the case, actually. And I do remember that room trying to get the star cone there, a little annoying to do. But, you get the hang of it after a bit. Alright, flying only upward scrolling. One unused camera setting is the direct equivalent of the one used in New Super Mario Bros. And New Super Mario Bros. 2. In those games, it prevents the camera from scrolling upward more at a certain adjustable number of tiles unless Mario is climbing a vine, in the former, or flying as Raccoon Mario in the latter, and is used for hiding secret areas. Here, it prevents the camera from scrolling upward at all unless Mario is flying using propeller, suit, or block. Oddly, instead of adjusting the scroll distance as in the other games, the attached numeric value adjusts the camera size in multiplayer mode. Alright, so depending on what number they put in the code is how much it would adjust. This is actually enabled in a few areas, but only ones where the cameras can't scroll at all anyway. It might be enabled just due to laziness, since value 0 enables it and value 15 is needed to disable it. The feature was probably scrapped in this game because it looks glitchy, and probably wouldn't work well in multiplayer. Other settings found. The levels can specify how close the player needs to be to the top/bottom edges of the screen for the camera to scroll vertically. That's used, but the values can also be different between single player and multiplayer modes, which isn't. A zoom change. This unused setting does nothing. The camera can be configured to consider any cardinal direction as forward, though the area including leftward, which is unused. Alright, some unused text. Test 1. The first message in the file with obvious purpose in the Japanese, USA, Spanish text, it is the same. The meaning is the same, except there is no 1 on the end. Story mode. Seems to be a label for the main mode on the menu. Versus mode. As you make progress in story mode, you'll unlock more courses to play in versus mode, which I think later became free-for-all mode. Seems to be text from an early scratch multiplayer mode. Yeah, probably. Instead of free-for-all mode, like I mentioned. Select a mode. Another piece of unused text from the main menu. Alright, now unused audio. Many, if not all, of the sounds that were in New Super Mario Bros. Are also present here with their original file names. They aren't listed below. Alright, streams over here. A news track in the game named cheap fanfare underscore ir.iy.32. Here's what that sounds like. Alright, this fanfare named this code here uses the same melody as all players in Bubbles, but is never heard anywhere, not even in the other multiplayer modes. But this code over here is an empty music file. The BRSAR is an empty called this code here. A demo equals cutscene. Omake equals bonus, which is the codes used for that. So I guess it's supposed to play whenever you get a bonus. But there is no BRSTM to go along with it. And here's what that sounds like. Alright, sequence data for animations. Similar to the BAHPS in much of the game's level music, all of the world maps themes contain sequence data, instructing the certain actors to animate and a handful of points in the song. World 9 is the only world to have no such actors, making this data unused there. Alright, here's what that looks like. Skip through this a little. That's the end of that. Alright, sound effects. And here's this whole list of sound effects as usual. Since it's quite lengthy, I will just scroll through it. Feel free to pause if you'd like to read this whole thing. Let me just read this one over here. On poo means note. This could be related to the strange note icon seen in the E3 2009 trailer. Alright, we got some other ones. Agakuribo. It refers to the chestnut Goombas. A coin sound similar to the Super Mario Bros. And New Super Mario Bros. Coin sound, but cuts off earlier and with a slight echo. Alright, maybe that was originally going to be collected in a cave-like setting. Who knows? Where it would echo. At inaudible, RC cannon refers to the Wii remote-controlled cannons in the green toad houses. Audible, possible, inaudible. Possibly refers to the remote controls on track loops, as the sounds of those come right before this one. Now, you can't bring a shooter to the world map like you could in Super Mario World. Alright, unused world map cutscenes. The player shrinks downward before blasting into another world. It seems this would have been triggered when standing on top of a cannon. In the final game, cannons are short 2D stages, and no, not animations on the world map. And the world map cannon models aren't animated at all. The following action replay code for PAL version 1 replaces the item menu with the cutscene. With this code over here. And there's what that looks like. Likely the stage for the cannon hadn't been made yet, so this was probably just a way to test it. Alright, with this code over here, a music note appears above the player's head and glides to a random map node. There are treasure ships appears above it and descends downward before the camera returns to the player. Alright, closer look at that. Alright, with these codes here, these would be used for traveling to and from some maps using warp pipes. In the final game, only World 3 has a submap, and it doesn't use a pipe. But map file names suggest that more worlds had this feature planned. Huh. That would have been cool, actually. Let's take a look at this. It's later down here. I will look at that momentarily. It would have been cool for them, the other ones to have submaps as well, as it states there. The code that uses these cutscenes still exists by editing this code here to create submap warp points that have the Dokkan pipe flag active. It can be seen that this feature is actually fully implemented and works perfectly. And here's what this looks like. Likely just a way to test the transitions before they animated it. Alright, with this code here, an unused cutscene for entering a world for the first time, in which the airship flies in and stops to drop the player off on the start node before continuing to the tower as normal. The player's voice sound effect is very delayed for some reason. The function that chooses the world map loads in cutscenes can select this one when entering a new world with the airship present. If the player's movement type is 2, meaning airship, when the airship flies away after beating it in the previous world, it actually does write 2 to that field despite the player not being on board anymore. But the player actor overwrites it with 1, locking, when he starts chasing after it. It seems to suggest that in an earlier design, the player would ride the airship into the next world after completing this stage, instead of getting kicked out and running after it. That would have been pretty sick, actually. How Mario takes over the airship and he uses it to go to the next world. I guess the reason why it's scrapped because, like, why doesn't he just use that to go to World 8? As cool as that would be, that'd be a bit of a they were there if you didn't. It's like you could skip all this and just go straight to Bowser using that, but whatever. It means that if the cutscene for completing an airship stage is modified to skip the player getting kicked out of the airship, he'll actually ride into it in the next world and demonstrate the unused cutscene. The following action replay code for PAL version 1 does that with this code here.
It's a go time.
Oh, yeah, that might be another reason why it was unused, because why in the mother of hell would Bowser's minions and the Koopalings let Mario ride into the next world with them? So that's another reason why they scrapped that. It just wouldn't make much sense. You know, one thing I just realized that I should have mentioned in the playthrough? When Mario was doing those airship levels, and since it's the same airship throughout the entire game, are the other Koopalings just chilling on there while he's beating up Bowser Jr. or going through the level? Why don't they help him? Whatever. I mean, help Bowser Jr., the other Koopalings, but I guess they're just waiting somewhere. Alright, with this code over here, fades the screen out and back in twice. The following action replay code for PAL version 1 replaces the item menu with this cutscene. This little code over here. But this code hides a Toad House if the player just completed one. So anytime you completed one, it will go in there using this code right over there. The defaulted cutscene for the completed course, this code here, incorporates that functionality directly, making this one redundant. Does nothing at all with this code. Shows or hides a Toad Rescue indicator bubble. This may have been intended to be used when switching between single player and multiplayer mode. In the final game, though, that's not done with a cutscene at all. Here's what that looks like. Alright, next up, level and early level configurations. Present in the world map folders on the disk is an unused configuration file for the collected star coin screen, this code here, which indicates an early level layout. The full contents can be seen in the notes page, but among the more notable differences. And here's a list of them over here. The game as a whole was generally more linear, given some levels were placed between what ended up being branches in the final game. World 1 didn't have 1-6, and has a secret airship, which would have been pretty cool. World 2 had a ghost house after the tower, lacked 2-6, and had a secret airship. We'll also see secret airship levels later on in New Super Mario Bros. 2. And I think in New Super Mario Bros. U as well. World 3 had 2 ghost houses. The first being between 1 and 2, or 3-1 and 3-2, and the second being between the tower, and 3-4. It also had an airship that wasn't secret. World 4's tower was not until between 4-5 and 4-6 and 4-7, and has no ghost house. 4-6 and 4-7 aren't in the final game. World 5 had 5-7, followed immediately by tower, castle, and an airship, which would have been really weird doing those 3 levels in a row like that instead of segmented. World 6 had a ghost house between 6 tower and 6-4 and 6-7. There was no 6-7 in the final game, and the airship would not have been a secret. Just like it is in the final game, but whatever. World 7's tower was located between 7-4 and 7-5. It had 7-7, which is in the final game, and didn't have a ghost house. Worlds 7-6 and 7-7 were also not going to be secret levels. Our World 8 had a secret second tower. This placement in the list after the castle suggests a very different final castle was planned. The used first tower was between 8-4 and 8-5, and 8-7 would have not been a secret level. World 9 did not exist yet. So that suggests that was pretty late in development for World 9. Mega Mushroom Leftovers. The game was originally going to have Mega Mario, as we've seen in previous episodes, but it seems to have been canned very early on. And underscore item, the actor which manages the various power-up items has an empty value which loads a mushroom model from this code here, but it crashes the game when used, and it does not have any other codes which use the value. There is no way to enable it without ASM hacking. the file, this code here, does not exist and is not referenced by the game otherwise. Also, as other evidence of Mega Mario being planned, the flying pipe objects were ported over for New Super Mario Bros., but are not used in the final game as we saw in previous parts. Alright, pipe joints. The pipe joint textures used in World 6 maps and the World 6 map icon depict an early pipe joint. It is also seen in the E3 2009 demo version. Here's a closer look at this. And here's the final version as comparison. Our World 7 cliff. The cliff model used in the World 7 map depicts an early athletic tile set design. And here's a closer look at this. Alright, here's the top part of its texture. Or the version where 7-4 would have been. Or was it 7-5? No, I think it was 7-5. Here's what it looks like in the final game. Alright, Yoshi colors. I did mention in the playthrough, as well as a previous episode, that originally we weren't going to have pink or light blue Yoshi. We were going to have red and blue one instead. In pre-release screenshots, we see that the game originally had a red and a blue Yoshi. They were changed to pink and light blue in the final versions. The file names for the Yoshi models, though, still follow the old coloring. y_text_red.arc for the red ones, and y_text, probably short for Yoshi, since he's a T-Rex in some ways, in some parts of his design, _blue.arc. Credits behavior. Most of the brick blocks in the credits scenes have contents chosen randomly and runtime. Randomly at runtime. Between empty 1 coin and 15 coins weighted unequally. However, 2 names are overridden to always have the same contents. Executive producer Satoru Iwata's name is spelled out using 15 coin bricks. More unexpectedly, though, coordinator Rina Yamauchi, the bricks are always empty, since most of the random bricks are selected to be empty anyways. It's unlikely that anyone would ever notice this without hacking. Alright, unused. The zone themes. Each zone in the game can have a theme, which changes how things are rendered, adds effects, and so on. But some levels are set to themes that are identical to the default overworld theme, rendering them useless. The following useless themes are used: 8/sky/bonus, a 17 icy cave, and 21 world 8 airship. Alright, and empty opening title folder. The directory, this code here, which corresponds to the title screen layout, is empty. The archive containing the layout and its assets is actually located in the folder dedicated to resource exclusives to the disk region instead. So someone moved the opening title data without deleting the folder in which it was originally located. Alright, actors' names. The Spotlight Boat, used in 6-6. The actor of the Spotlight Boat in World 6-6 is named Nice_Boat. The C++ code class, the Nice Boat_C. That's funny. It may be reference to a meme that circulated in Japan in late 2007, coinciding with the game's development period. Our Bouncy Cloud. Most actors with Remo or Remocon, short for remote controller, referring to the Wii remote, in their name uses motion controls. The only exception is this code here, the Bouncy Clouds from World 9-8. If motion controls functionality was planned for this actor at some point, perhaps to tilt it or to move it left and right, no code of it remains, or for it remains. It may also just be copy and pasted mistake, since the 3 actors preceding it are motion control platforms with similar names. New Super Mario Bros. U does a moving bouncy cloud, does have moving bouncy clouds, but they aren't motion controlled. Alternate level slots. The world map supports and reserves level IDs for 2 warp cannons, towers, castles, and airships per world, even though there is only up to 1 for each in a single world, up to World 6, but yeah. And non-existent subworlds. World 3 is split up into 2 maps, W3A and W3B, short for World 3A, World 3B. Interestingly enough, though, the files of World 2 and 6 are named as if they were also split up. World 2A and World and 6A and W6A. Or W2A and W6A. This suggests that they were originally meant to have multiple segments. As a coincidence, the game will attempt to load routes. As a consequence, the game will attempt to load route information from W2B and W6B, but it fails and moves onto loading the next world's data instead. In addition, the game will attempt to load info about W3C and WAA, and also fail, but it is simply due to how the game loops through the worlds, not an indication of more cut maps. If there's not a single map for the next world, it will try to load subworld A, and if the current world is a subworld, it will try loading the next subworld. It stops loading data if the next world doesn't exist, which is why it stops at world A, which comes after 9 in hexadecimals. Our debug replays. The code that loads replay files can choose from 4 folders. This code here, hint movies, this code here for super guides, this code here for title screen and chat mode demos, and replay slash debug or slash replay slash debug. There is no this code here folder in the final game. Exception handlers. The exception handler is still in the game's code, but can't be seen normally without hacking or causing an especially horrendous glitch. When it does crash, press home and these buttons in this order on player 1's Wii remote. The player will then see the processor's state at the time of the crash, as well as some trace info. You can see it in action, for example, via the Yoshi Berry crash. Alright, here's a closer look at this. Let's just get through some parts. And all these codes that show up here. And you're really not supposed to see this. Our development text. Title screen date. The title screen layout contains a pane called this code here, which is deliberately disabled by the game's code. When viewed, it displays the date of April 13th, 2009 at 19:01:59 in military time. That's 7:01, pretty much 7:02, which is presumably when the layout was created. This date does not change in any release, even as the title screen layout kept getting updated. You can see it in game with the following PAL version 1 action replay code. This code here. Let's take it, and this is what it looks like over here. Our internal project names. The project names is Wii MJ2D, or just MJ2D. Mario Journey /Jump 2D. According to multiple file names, MJ can be found in an NSMBDS. This is ROM, or New Super Mario Bros. DS's ROM. Alright, build date and numbers. 4 empty files exist in the main folder, with file names listing build dates and some kind of build numbers. And here's the entire code over here for the different versions. This one, a file called Wii MJ2DNP.str is present in the root folder and lists the locations of some partially linked codes. Hayakawa is likely Kenzo Hayakawa, listed under System Programming in the game's credits. And here's what all this code is for that. Alright, anti-piracy, Wii physical release. Wii discs contain burst cutting area, BCA, data near the center. When the majority of it is reserved for the console standard disk authentication system, and some manufacturing information. 0 by 34 bits are available to games. Super Mario Bros Wii is the only game known to have any data there instead of having been left blank, filled with no bits. And Super Mario Bros Wii's BCA data isn't very complex, just 0 by 33 no bits and a single 0-1 bit. But it's enough for an anti-piracy check. At startup, the game compares the BCA data to an expected pattern, and if it doesn't match, it adds an entry with custom error code, this code here, to the console's disk drive error log, possibly for Nintendo to expect later. Even back in 2009, they were worried about anti-piracy. That was long before they would start breaking people's consoles. If the console was ever sent in for repairs, it then appears to run normally, but after a random amount of time between 3 to 10 minutes, it halts and displays a generic "an error has occurred" message. The check is skipped if the game detects it's running on a dev kit. This check initially caused issues for pirates, as mod chips and USB loaders didn't properly supply the BCA data to the game, and burnt discs didn't have it at all. Alright, and NVIDIA Shield TV. When the game is first booted on the NVIDIA Shield TV, it connects to IQIYIS's online servers in order to validate that a logged in user is licensed to play the game. If they're not, the game refuses to load. There's a second, more important license check that connects to a NVIDIA server. This server was shut down in 2021, making the version of the game possible to play under normal circumstances. However, as these license checks are easily circumvented, NVIDIA implemented an additional, much more devious layer of an anti-piracy. For each game used this form of DRM, which is called NVIDIA's Security Interface, or NVSI, a function was stripped out of the code either partially or entirely. The game still boots, but the code ripped out was crucial to making the game playable. The missing code was then recompiled natively for the Tegra X1's dedicated security hardware. Tsect and placed in an encrypted blob called the snippet. Tsect handles the license check with the NVIDIA server from earlier, and at the same time, it sent a copy of the snippet to the server, which would decrypt it, and set back to also encrypted. Files inside of the player is deemed illegitimate. As files inside of whatever. The part of the code that was stripped is replaced with some code that tells Tsect run the snippet, and after validating that it is unmodified, Tsect decrypts and runs the code, thereby restoring the missing functionality. The Wii games on Shield TV run in an emulator called Linkod. In order to communicate with Tsect, the game calls a sub function named linkod underscore call NVSIS snippet with parentheses as the code there to use this. Linkod has a feature that lets it run its own native implementation of any given function in the game, and the one it provides for this code here performs the calls to Tsect. In the game's case, part of the function for generating the orthographic cameras, matrices, has been replaced with a call to this code here if the snippet fails to run. The camera is pointed away from the level, so the screen appears completely black. Graphics for cutscenes, menus, and world maps are unaffected. Seems like a really cool challenge level, honestly. Have the camera turned completely away from it, but here's what that looks like with the camera turned away from the screen, since you pirated the game. And here's someone trying to play the level with the pirated. And notice how the font is also a little different too in this pirated copy. Like, imagine trying to play this game without being able to see anything. I mean, I think some people have done it blindfolded, so that's probably the same case there. Alright, we're not done just yet. There's some more unused content I found on this here wiki right over here. Alright, unused enemies, New Super Mario Bros. U4. Alright, the pumpkin. A Goomba, Sprite 22. A glitchy Goomba meant for the levels in Pumpkin Boneyard. It requires 2 stomps to kill. Alright, this is newer Super Mario Bros. Wii, which is a mod for New Super Mario Bros. Wii, but you know what? Why not? Let's go through this real fast. Throwing Hammer Brothers, Sprite 95, MS25. Oh, this is a mod for it, for New Super Mario Bros. Wii. But still. Yeah, maybe I'll look at this another time, actually. Didn't realize that was for New Super Mario Bros. Wii, so yeah, just ignore that. But anyways, I think that'll be it for all the unused content that I have found in New Super Mario Bros. Wii. If y'all learned something new and you want to see more, please leave a comment and subscribe. And once again, as usual, answer the question of the day. Of all the unused content we went over today, which would you have liked to see? Not counting New Super Mario Bros. Wii over there, that's a mistake. Just ignore that. But of all the unused content we went over, which would you have liked to see in the final game and why? I guess Mario taking over the ship and going into the next world would have been pretty sick. I would have loved to see that in game, but it would have made more sense if Bowser had like multiple airships, which we know he does have, for that to make a little sense. So I wish they implemented something like that for that to be used. But anyways, in the next unused videos, we'll be covering a new game, or a different game. Thank you all for watching, and have a terrific day.